Hello, and welcome back to the Going Off Track podcast. I am Kathryn, and this is day 18 of our F101 spring break sprint to get us to the last race of the 2026 season and the next race of the 2026 season coming up in Miami. In case you've missed it, I have linked above the beginning of this series in the first episode where I break down why we're here, what we're doing. But long story short, I am diving into old F1 lore and F1 history from before I became a fan midway through the 2021 season, helping to educate other Drive to Survive era fans about weird things that happened in the sport from before we kind of showed up. Yesterday, we talked about that one time Jos Verstappen caught fire while refueling his car and kind of why Formula One moved away from refueling in general. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss a video in this series and all season long, and so I can continue to inflict my motorsport opinions on the greater population. And if you're listening on your preferred podcast platform, don't forget to leave us a 5-star review there too. Now let's talk about the European Grand Prix, because as I said in the teaser of the last episode, there have been many Grands Prix held in Europe. I can think of many of them off the top of my head, like Silverstone and Monza and Imola and the former races in France and the races in Spain. That is all in Europe. But the title of the European Grand Prix was initially given as an honorific. It went back and forth of like whether it's an honorific or whether it's a differentiator type of race for stopgaps, or if there are multiple races in the same country to kind of make it different. So it's not just the United States Grand Prix, the United States Grand Prix, the United States Grand Prix to be specific, which is why we have the United States Grand Prix, which is the race at COTA, whereas the Miami Grand Prix is the race in Miami and the Vegas Grand Prix is the race in Vegas. So there have been many. And this was initially created as an honorific title by the AIACR, which was the predecessor to the FIA. And the designation of the first ever European Grand Prix was actually the Italian Grand Prix of 1923. So we're talking way pre-Formula One, because there was motor racing for many, 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 many years before. As long as there have been cars, there has been motor racing. So after that, the Belgian Grand Prix was given the title in 1930. There was a little pause for that thing called World War II. And then the FIA revived the title and gave it back to the Belgian Grand Prix in 1947. Then it became, as I mentioned, a kind of a stopgap race, or we have an emergency, a race got canceled and we need to fill this date. Now, if you're wondering why we haven't replaced the Bahrain race or the Saudi Arabia race, which is coming up this weekend, or should have been coming up this weekend, I have an entire episode about why that happened and why the races were not replaced, even though there were a couple of options. But in the 1980s, the European Grand Prix became a race for a stopgap. The first one was in 83, where F1 was supposed to race near Flushing Meadows in New York, but that fell through, and the track organizers at Brands Hatch in the UK put together a replacement race, and they named it the European Grand Prix to not conflict with the British Grand Prix at Silverstone that same year. In 1985, Brands Hatch was once again picked up because a race in Rome fell through, which I think a race in Rome would have been really cool, but oops. In 1993, there was supposed to be the Asian Grand Prix in Japan to replace the Mexican Grand Prix, but that fell through. So Donington Park was given the European GP title. And I've talked about that race in different episodes. Then in Spain, there were supposed to be Grands Prix that were held in 94 and 97, but a modified shorter track at the Nürburgring was replaced instead in 95 and 96, and also from 1999 to 2007. And then the European Grand Prix title returned to Valencia, Spain in 2008 and was there from 2008 to 2012. And now the last time we had a European Grand Prix was interestingly in Baku, Azerbaijan, which I know like that part of Eastern Europe, Eurasia there's the technicalities of where you want to consider where Azerbaijan is in what you consider that to be. But that was the last time that they used the designation of the European Grand Prix. It was in 2016. So the last winner was Nico Rosberg, who would go on to win the World Championship that year, which we have an entire episode about the 2016 season and the highlight races that you should watch. That is also linked down in the show notes. And the podium was filled out by Sebastian Vettel and Sergio Perez. Now, repeat winners of the European Grand Prix, there were a few. Of course, Michael Schumacher, the best to ever do it. He had 6 wins at the European Grand Prix in 1994, 95, 2000, 2001, 2004, and 2006. And he is the winningest European Grand Prix race winner by a lot, because the second most is Fernando Alonso, who had 3 wins in 2005, 2007, and 2012. And then followed by Rubens Barrichello and Sebastian Vettel, who have each won the European Grand Prix twice. Barrichello did it in 2002 and 2009, and Vettel won it in 2010 and 2011. On the constructors side, Ferrari, Schumacher, etc., they won it 7 times. McLaren won it 4 times. Williams won it 3 times. Benetton and Red Bull both won it twice. So I think it's very interesting. The original conceit for it was like a race to honor Europe for a European motorsport organization that got its start in Europe and was basically a European sport for a very long time. And then they're like, let's recognize Europe. Congratulations to Europe, you exist. I like it makes more sense to me, obviously, of like, we need a race really quick. Let's throw it together in Valencia and let's slap it on as the European Grand Prix, so we don't forget which race was the Spanish Grand Prix, because it's all in the same country. So it's really interesting, like the hoops they went through back then, that we, due to contract restraints and those types of restrictions, that we, I guess, don't see now, or at least don't see now in the sense of what happened with the Bahrain and Saudi Arabia cancellations of 2026. Anyway, it's interesting, and it makes me giggle when you look at the schedule. Like, there's the European Grand Prix for a race series that is European. Anyway, coming up next, we are talking about F1's oldest race winner. And no, it is not Fernando Alonso, at least not yet. We don't know. So don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss a video. Thanks for going off track with me, and I will see you in the next one.